you think you'd be here if it weren't for Trevor, or having the chance to take Trevor? Because obviously you looked at him and everything else.
Oh, I do, I can tell you no, but that had, and I was in the house and I saw the Jets win.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wait a minute now, that means, because I've always really admired Trevor.
So a factor, at the very
Sure,
least.
sure.
Yeah. All right, Urban, well, let's start here. You're about 6 months in. What's the biggest adjustment for you? What's been the biggest adjustment for you going from college to the NFL?
Well, I think it's 8 months, but who's counting, right?
Yeah.
We're in August now. Biggest adjustment, it's really not as big as I thought. I think the biggest issue is going to be roster management. I've heard this from my colleagues, NFL colleagues, as well as, it's once you start getting down to under 50 players on a roster, what's practice going to look like? But we've had 90, so it's really been not that different than college. But we cut 5 today, we're going to cut 5 next week, and then you go down to 53, and that's going to be a major adjustment.
So what was like the stuff that you've been able to take that works, like in the parts of your program, because obviously you've been a head coach for going on 20 years now, like what's the stuff that you feel like you could take directly from a college program and basically put it here?
The college game and NFL game, in my opinion, and really most people's, it's never been closer. The college player has changed, the NFL scheme has changed, so think about the two of those. So NFL scheme used to be far dramatically different than college, and then the college player used to be much different, whereas, the young kid, those aren't young kids anymore. Now, I mean, there are a lot of them that start getting paid. The empowerment that's gone on in the college football, the mindset of a college athlete is really, especially when you get to like the players I was fortunate to have, it's all about the NFL, and make no mistake about it. So the two worlds are probably never been closer. There are differences, but they've never been closer.
So what's so you're saying like basically by the time, when you were at Ohio State, when the guy gets to be 21, 22 years old, you're basically operating like he's a pro? Yeah,
I remember Bill Belichick came into my practice one time and he says, "You got more first rounders than I do," and so we'd look at our NFL or our roster, and you'd have 35 guys at some point are going to be on NFL teams. So you treat them differently than the Bowling Green and plus the players changed. It's all about value, and I really learned to appreciate that. When you're coaching guys like Bosa, Chase Young, Zeke Elliott, these great players, you're darn right it's about value. So you got to treat them a little, much differently than that player 20 years ago.
How do you motivate them differently? Because obviously you're a psychology major, so I mean, being able to do that with a 21, 22-year-old, you say it's the same in some ways as a 27, 28-year-old. How is it different motivating a guy now than maybe it was 20 years ago?
I think it's based on 3 things I tell them. We're going to maximize your value, extend your career, and win. And those 3 things, every day we wake up as coaches, I ask our coaches all the time, are you maximizing that player's value? And whether he plays here or he moves on, our job is to maximize the value. How do you do that? Fundamentals, learning how to play the game, and winning. You get associated on a losing team, your value's not very high. And so players buy into that. These players have really bought into it. We got to play better, but as far as I hear that word buy-in, and I'm fortunate we really never had not buy-in. But I know if a player knows that you care about his value, you care about extending his career, and you want to win, they're all in.
So how do you prove that you're really all in on him? And I think one of the things that I remember talking about 8 months ago, not 6 months ago, I guess, was like that you wanted facilities, you wanted staff, you wanted the best for your players. Like, how big a part of like proving to them, like we're really invested on you, is maybe giving them those sorts of things?
Well, the worst thing you could do is say it and not do it. And we're fortunate to have not a good owner, a great owner. And we're reinvesting in the most important commodity in any organization, that's the players. And I've always believed in pushing players to the edge, but then also treating them with the very best of the best. That means the best. You talk about maximizing a guy's value. How do you do that? Keep them healthy.
Yeah.
How do you extend their career? Keep them healthy. Give them all the tools here. I don't believe a professional athlete should pay for anything. I believe that should all be done in-house, and fortunately we're able to do that now.
What couldn't you bring from the college game then? What are some of the things that you did that maybe were foundation pieces of the way you built in college that didn't translate?
Well, we talked about, maybe not so much that, but the conversation we had a minute ago about, for probably the last 15 years, we've had as much, I think someone told me we've had more, it's either us or Alabama.
Yeah.
The most first rounders, the most draft picks. So I've witnessed all 32 teams go about their business, maybe more than, I think Coach Saban and Coach Sweeney. There's some other, Coach Day's doing it now. You see these organizations because they're always at your facility.
Yeah.
and it's almost like a cookie cutter. When the teams that struggle, there's a lack of cooperation between the personnel and the coaching staff. I see a scout or someone that's survived 5 coaching staffs and all he does is bitch about the coaching staff. And I'm like, did I really hear that? Or you talk to my friends that are coaches and they complain about the lack of cooperation. So something, what I have done here is with Trent, Bulky, and our personnel, everything is cooperation. I can't promise wins or anything like that, but I promise you there's going to be great cooperation. So I didn't really answer your question about what we didn't do in college, or what we can't do in college, but I just think successful organizations, you can pretty much tell when you can take their shirt off them, but I can see the way they work, and I can hear the words out of their mouth. They're winning.
How'd you work the collaboration part with Trent? Because you've never worked with an NFL scouting department before. I know you have a recruiting department. Those are younger guys. I think that there's probably a little bit of a different dynamic. So how'd you try to foster the collaboration between you guys, you and your coaches, and then Trent and his scouts?
Really, Trent and I are tight at the hip. We spend hours upon hours together. We starting all the way back to the end of season report, we call it. That's our evaluation of our current roster. Our coaches are very involved. They're held accountable. And ultimate authority goes to that coach. Who goes in that room? I will never ask a coach if he slams a fist on the table. I don't want that guy because his job's on the line. That whoever goes in that room, he's got to coach. And so he better do his homework too. And so I'm really proud of the fact that our free agents, I think we were good on all of them. The big number of free agents we brought in here. So how did that happen? Because our coaches got on the phone. We weren't able to fly them in, or our coaches did all the behind scenes with our personnel department.
Is there something that they all have in common then? I guess every coach has his non-negotiables, right? Like when you look at the 90 guys that are out there right now, or I guess down to 85 today, is there something that you think ties every one of them together where it's like, this is my non-negotiable and they all have this?
As far as a player?
Oh
yeah. Number one is competitive spirit. If they're, there's many ways to, you call the analytics. How do you do that? Go watch the rivalry games. Go watch the 4th downs. Go watch the 3rd and shorts. Go watch when the game's on the line. The most competitive players play their best. I didn't say play perfect, but they play their best. They play the hardest. Toughness is number 2. That's this game 100 years ago was about tough people. It's going to be that way years from now. Leadership, intelligence, and adaptability. Those are the 5 qualities that each coach and personnel, we grade each player. And every coach is held accountable for that. And that's not just go call someone, get on the plane, go find out, talk to the equipment people, talk to his college coach, talk to his high school coach. I want to know everything I can about those players.
Okay, so if you've been looking for that, then have you already seen it show up? And I think there's a process to get there, but are there little flashes where you've seen those 5 things that you're looking for showing up?
Ray Jenkins is, I didn't know Ray Sean Jenkins. I know he was from Tampa, St. Pete area. I talked to Lewis Murphy a little bit about him, but what got me sold is I called my former player, KJ Hill. And I said, tell me about this guy. And he told me, my former players are going to tell me the truth. And he knew exactly what I'm looking for. And, KJ and I are extremely close. And he said, Coach, he's got it all. He's what you got. He's what you want. That's the way you go about your business. And he's one guy that I'd be surprised if he's not one of the best in the league.
Okay, last thing on that then. And I think you and I had a conversation about this maybe a year and a half ago, but I remember talking to you about how you'd studied, and this when you were at Fox, how you'd studied NFL programs, and you spent that season, and there were the rumors about you and the Cowboys and all that different stuff, where you'd actually taken some time and studied some of the programs. And I remember you pointing out the Saints and saying that the Saints program has a lot of our players, and I understand why they fit in there. What are the biggest things you took from the period that you spent studying NFL teams where I think maybe you're thinking to yourself, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this?
Well, it started in January, and it was a 12-month research project, and I hundreds of hours spent on it. The best thing I ever did was I talked to my former guys. I have about 30 players that either recent or they're in the NFL. And once again, within 5 minutes of that phone conversation, I can tell what kind of organization he's in. And the common theme of the Saints, why I respect first of all, I respect their coach, but they also had, I think, 1.5 of my players. And they would say it's very similar to the way we did business here. Everything's competitive. Everything's a meritocracy. Players get treated, they get pushed, but they get treated great. Those are all the things I look for. So the word culture comes out of the New Orleans Saints culture. There's other ones, the Steelers are a team that they're very close to us in Ohio State, and Kevin Colbert and Tomlin, they were great. I would always spend time with their GM, and I just admire the way they do about their business. So And my players, Shazier was there for several years. So I would talk to those guys. The word that always came out was culture, was this is the way they do it.
Yeah.
And I learned that back in 2006 when Bill Belichick invited me to spend a few days with him at New England. The thing that, I went there, I love watching Brady throw.
Yeah.
That's not why I went there.
Right.
I wanted to see the culture of the Patriots.
What did you see with the culture of the Patriots then? Because
it's all business.
I mean, I can remember, I had a conversation with Bill 2008, and I remember him asking him, what's it like for you to have your best player be the guy who's winning the parking spot every year? And he stopped and he said, it's exactly what you're looking for.
That's exactly what he had, too.
Yeah.
And Vrabel was there, Bruschi was there. I'll never forget it. I was a young coach at Florida. He invites me up, and I get chills thinking about it. I walk in, and because I've been to 20 NFL camps.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I walked away a few times going, what did I just watch?
Right.
I walked away from that one going, my gosh.
Yeah.
Here's Mike Vrabel and Teddy Bruschi running down on full speed on scout kickoff.
Yeah.
With those, the beanies on their head.
Yeah.
And going full speed, and then everyone else is talking scheme. I grabbed Bruschi and Vrabel, and I said, just tell me about this place, man. And he says, one thing that's never going to happen, it's not going to get to Coach Belichick's office. We'll handle it in the locker room. If a guy gets in the way of us winning, he won't be here.
Yeah.
And it's ironic, the same thing with Jimmy Johnson, same thing with Michael Irvin. We had him come speak to our team. And that's the message I wanted. The locker room, it's so easy to blame a player and say he's a bad player. In most of the case, that's not true at all.
Right.
There's a bad culture.
Okay. Scheme, you said, isn't the biggest thing, but it is a thing.
Sure.
And that and obviously, going back to when you were at Utah and Florida, you were known as an innovator when it comes to that. Is it overblown? Because you said earlier, the difference between college and pro has never been smaller. Have you had to adjust to what the NFL game is from a scheme standpoint, or is it close enough now where maybe that was a little bit more manageable than it would have been 10 or 15 years ago?
Yeah, 10 or 15, we did something. We kind of did something unknown. It was a hood ornament, or it was a a novelty, and we really shocked a lot of people. I remember the coach who was at A&M and North Carolina. We put 700 yards on North Carolina. I remember that guy going, "What is that? We don't know what you're doing." And, but everybody's doing it now.
Right.
So it's very cyclical, and defenses are much better now. So that's one of the reasons I hired a very experienced coaching staff on offense. You got George Warhop, Schottenheimer, and Bevel.
Yeah.
So it is. It's a much different world, and it's not like you're going to go trick the NFL.
Right.
Everybody's running some sort of. It's about personnel being fundamentally sound, and you got to. Scheme's important, obviously. Okay.
I want to ask you about your quarterbacks too. Why is it important for Trevor to have to compete for the job? Because obviously, and a lot of people made a big deal out of that, how, Trevor was the first pick, and chances are he's starting week 1. Why is it important to you to make sure that he earns that and he takes it from Gardner Minshew?
Well, Minshew's not giving it up. If Minshew was not, this is not, someone says, I've been asked that question, I look at them like they got several heads. What are you talking? This is, yes, competition brings out the best in all of us. But if there was no competition, this is not a circus here.
Right.
There's a guy that actually has done okay in the NFL, not great, Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
But his numbers are decent.
Yeah.
He's a much different player than Trevor as far as Trevor's a down the field. This guy's a scramble around, make plays, but I'll tell you what he is, he's a warrior. Yeah. And I appreciate warriors. He's not, it's a street fight right now. When someone says, oh, come on, and why'd you ask me that question if you're going to not believe? I mean, it is what it is. It's a battle. I see the stats every day, and the greatest thing that can happen is that becomes a street fight for as long as possible. How important is it for your team to see that too, when the highest profile guy has to fight for it the same way, maybe the third guy in the guard rotation has to? Yeah, I think the reality is too, the NFL is a tough, violent sport, and having a backup quarterback, having two people in a position, whether it be a left tackle or a quarterback, is essential. And I think our team sees that right now too, that there's two guys that rolling in and out of there that there's confidence in. You think you'd be here if it weren't for Trevor, or having the chance to take Trevor? Because obviously you looked at him and everything else. Oh, I do. I can tell you no, but that had, and I was in the house and I saw the Jets win. Yeah. And I remember thinking, wait a minute now, that was because I've always really admired Trevor, and not just as a player, but his skill set, his humility, just how humble he is, but obviously a heck of a player. So a factor at the very least. Sure. Yeah. The other thing that's sort of interesting, you didn't lose a lot in college, and generally these things are gradual in the NFL. So winning 6 games would be a 5-game improvement for this group.
winning 7 games would be a 6-game improvement for this group, but that would mean 6-11 or 7-10. Like, have you thought about how you'd be handling something like that? Like how you might handle losing more games in a season than maybe you did your entire time at Ohio State or Florida?
Well, I have thought about that, and Ryan Day and I actually talk about it all the time. Ryan Day and Ohio State's been built to the fact you go 13-1, it's a bad year. What happened?
Right.
You know, but that's reality. We did the same thing in Florida. You talk about you're playing good teams and you can't lose. Or, you know, the reality is you're playing a good team every week in the NFL. So I am training my mind. I can't stand losing. That doesn't mean I'm going to accept it, or I don't want players here and accepting it. But that's also reality. So I've been training my mind. We lost our first preseason game. I keep hearing it's just a preseason game. Well, we lost. You know, our objective, as long as they're keeping scores, is to go win. But I get it, and but I've been working on it.
Are you worried about it?
What?
Are you worried about like how you handle losing? Like,
yeah, I worry about everything. But yeah, to say I'm going to accept it, no, I won't accept it.
Right.
But it's just part of the job of being in the NFL.
And the standard is not to go 6-11 or 7-10, I would assume.
No, certainly not, and certainly not, and that never will be in my mind.
Okay, last thing then I'd have for you would just be why. And you had Jimmy Johnson out here, and I sort of like took note of that because Jimmy decided at a younger age than you know what, I'd rather go fishing down the Keys. And you had health issues at Florida, health issues at Ohio State, and you've been through a lot. Why are you out there in 110-degree heat?
I prayed hard on it. You know, it's ironic you bring Jimmy Johnson into it, but he's been a mentor. He's a guy that has become a mentor. He hasn't in my younger days, but the last couple of years, I've always admired him. We've become friends, and I know, I just felt an emptiness, and I had some opportunities in college, and I just, he made a comment to me one time. He says, "You've reached the point. Do what you want to do."
Yeah.
And do I really want to go recruit, 24/7 like it became? Do I really? And I've done that. And I said, I've always admired and appreciated and respected the NFL. And then the Shad Khan guy, who once I got to know him, you love the guy. I mean, he wants to win so bad. I've always loved Jacksonville, Florida. And it's like this puzzle got put together. I looked at film endlessly and saw some decent players here. And I thought, let's go take a swing at it. And that's why we did it.
Was it hard watching football without being a part of it? I mean, you are a part of it, so you got to watch it and everything else, and you got to. I'm sure there were ways you filled the.
It was hard not being part of a team.
Okay.
Not football. To say I love football, I love teams. I love any team that I can be a part of. I do love the game of football, but not as much as I love a team and. Having a greater good, that you get a group of people saying, hey, let's come together and do this. That's what I really miss dearly.
So it'd be like the middle of the week then when you're prepping for your game on Fox and it's like you're not around a team, or you're on Zoom with Brady and Matt and Reggie and those guys, right?
And I do love those guys, but at the end of the day, you didn't win or lose either. Biggest decision you make, I tell people when I was at Fox, is steak, chicken, or fish on a Friday night. What do you eat for dinner?
Yeah.
The decisions you make here are real.
Okay. Do you think you'll ever get to the point where you don't need it? Like, because I've always heard that, and you hear about that, a lot of the great ones, it's like there's almost like this fear of what it's going to be like after. Like, do you think you'll ever get to the point where you're okay sitting on a boat?
I thought it was there, and I would have been fine without it, to be honest with you. I would have been fine if this wasn't one of those opportunities. I was not going to go move somewhere I don't want to live. I wasn't going to go take something. When you start having an owner tell you how to do your business and the lack of collaboration, there's no chance I was going to get involved in that. I guess I'm too old for that kind of stuff. We're going to do it our way, and we're going to try our very best with cooperative, hire great staff, and work these players and treat them great and see what happens.
And this is where you thought it'd be? This is like the last 8 months, not 6, 8 months, it's been what you thought it would be?
It's actually been a little better.
Okay.
It's been a little better. I don't have a bad guy on the team, and I really like our staff. And the more I'm around our owner, I even respect him more.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.